Okay people, so we got part 1 of the brand new 2024 interview from the creator of Naruto, Masashi Kishimoto, and the artist of Boruto, Mikio Ikemoto. And yeah people, there's some interesting stuff already, because there's going to be a second part to this interview that'll happen in a couple of days, but they started off with some questions asking the both of them, and there's some interesting stuff here also hinting towards who's really steering the ship of the Boruto story. Because in case you don't know, it's been a fandom debate for years now, ever since the end of Ukyo Kodachi's run of being the writer of the Boruto manga, as to who's actually writing the manga. Now initially the press release stated that Naruto creator Masashi Kishimoto was going to take over the story of Boruto and be the writer, and that was again around the point of Baryon Mode Naruto. I want to say when that chapter dropped, supposedly Kishimoto was announced to have been writing it. Ever since that chapter, they removed the name of Ukyo Kodachi from the cover pages of the chapters of Boruto. However, Masashi Kishimoto has never been credited as the writer, more so supervisor, with Mikio Ikemoto being the artist. So a lot of fans have assumed, well, they announced that as Kishimoto, but if he's not being credited as the writer, is he really writing it? How is the production happening with Boruto in general when it comes to the manga? I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some fans that just say, no, it's Kishimoto, or some fans that say, no, he's not involved, but here we have clarification on that as well. But let's start off with the first question. Apparently, a question was asked about Code, and they said that Code should have died, but they almost never agree on which characters to kill. That is major, okay? That is a huge one, because whether it be the original Boruto manga or the Boruto 2 Blue Vortex manga, Code has been seen to be supposed to be a threat, especially towards the end of part 1 of Boruto. After Ishiki is defeated, it seemed as though he was going to take up the mantle of Ishiki Otsutsuki and really become the big villain, so to speak. However, since those events, Code has never really had those moments, those triumphant victories of any sorts that would put him in the case of being, a big villain. So the fact that he was actually initially supposed to die makes me question what has been the case of Code's character all up to this point. If he was so expendable that they were going to get rid of him, I mean, granted, it could be a case where they completely had a huge change of heart, a vision change. In general, they started seeing things different with the character after a certain point, or it could just be that they just decided at the last minute to keep him alive, but they don't really have grandiose plans for him, because even in 2 Blue Vortex, the point where he should come back now and be a serious menace, ultimately Code hasn't really been doing much. In fact, Boruto was able to kick his tail a bit effortlessly in the 2 Blue Vortex manga, so it speaks volumes that he was initially supposed to die, and the character, I don't want to say his, wins died, but yeah, he's never been the threat, even removing the limiters. That's crazy that he was supposed to die and he's just kind of sticking around. I think a lot of that also probably has to do with Ukyo Kodachi's departure from the manga. Maybe Ukyo Kodachi had big plans for Code, but after he was removed from the Boruto manga, maybe they shredded the plans that he had to kind of make Code more prevalent. I remember Kodachi saying that he was very inspired by My Hero Academia while creating Boruto, so maybe Code was initially supposed to play like a Shigaraki-esque role of, getting beat down, and eventually he becomes a great baddie, but Ukyo Kodachi leaving, they were like, ixnay on that, we're gonna go a different direction. But they were probably at that point already stuck with some of the elements that was set forth of Code being somewhat important, to the point where they were like, well, we gotta figure something to do with the character. Okay, the next piece of information that we got from the interview is regarding Boruto's character. They said Boruto is a character who has everything and who will ultimately end up losing everything, unlike Naruto. And here's the thing where that kind of feels a little bit outdated, just because Boruto already lost everything and is currently on the road to recovering everything. He lost everybody in the village, don't love him like they used to because they think that he's Kawaki, etc, etc. He lost it all. His master's stuck in a tree, his father and his mother are stuck in another dimension. Now at this point, he's slowly waking people up from the hidden leaf and kind of trying to make people see the light, so to speak. So he already lost it all. He's currently on the road to kind of rebuilding, so to speak. And I mean, Momoshiki kind of said this like a million times in the series in part 1 anyway, so we already knew that. But yeah, I think Boruto's on the rebound at this point. I mean, even the state of the manga itself, from part 1 to part 2, there's been way more critical acclaim and even praise for Boruto as an MC in general that way more supersedes any praise or critical acclaim the Boruto part 1 manga had, especially with Boruto as an MC. It's up for Boruto. He's about to take some W's, baby. Then this was the piece of information that really made me think like, okay, so this has to be clear indication that ultimately Kishimoto isn't writing the manga, because it says Kishimoto checks Ikemoto's work every month. There's a couple of ways to look at that, to be honest with you. First impression of what I thought when I read that was, okay, he just walks by every month for like a day or two, sees what what Ikemoto's working on, what story is going on, and he's essentially like an editor. That's what I got from that initially. I was like, all right, so this confirms Kishimoto's not really writing it. Ikemoto is the one doing everything, and Kishimoto just gives him a pass on this or that, or throws him some ideas. But you could also look at it from another perspective of they work solo. Kishimoto hands him the draft, and every month he checks Ikemoto's art. So there's that possibility as well. I mean, I never really thought that Kishimoto was completely 1000% removed from the Boruto Naruto franchise as far as he's not doing anything. I just always assumed that he wasn't doing the crux of the writing if he's not being credited as the writer. I thought it was more so a Akira Toriyama classic back with the movies and the Dragon Ball Super stuff, where he would hand some ideas over and they would go from point A to point B with their own judgment. So that's what I always thought with Kishimoto. And this piece of information, it doesn't necessarily confirm that Kishimoto's not writing it, but at face value to me, that's what I got from it. That Ikemoto does it, Kishimoto comes in, let's just say on the 15th, yo dog, how's everything going? Oh shoot, you got that happening with Boruto? Yo, why don't you make Mitsuki do this? And walks out. But again, I could be totally wrong. Please let me know how you feel about that one. It's just my opinion on that statement, but who knows? Then the next piece of information is again something that was kind of already readily available and we've known for quite some time, but in case you didn't, Kishimoto planned not to make Boruto if Ikemoto did not accept the role. I remember way back in the day when this first came out, this piece of information, yeah, it actually made a lot of fans rejoice, the fact that Ikemoto is somebody that was working on the Naruto manga ever since chapter 7. So Ikemoto's been around a long time as far as he's been there from pretty much the start of Naruto. And yeah, I remember Kishimoto even saying back in the day that they offered for him to do a Naruto continuation like towards the end of Naruto. Initially it wasn't gonna go into 700. Shueisha pretty much was pleading with Kishimoto, hey, why don't you do a continuation? And Kishimoto was like, no, I'm good. They were like, but money. He was like, no, I'm good, I got money. Then they were like, okay, well, what about a spin-off? Kishimoto was still like, I don't know, can my mans do it? And then boom, that's how it was created. Then big factoid that is no shocker to anybody that reads Two Blue Vortex, but it's still pretty awesome to hear it being acknowledged from one of the original creators of the story. Boruto likes to act like Sasuke. He does it to leave his master a thought. I mean, he's always been inspired, influenced. You know, he practically worships Sasuke. This is like telling me water is wet. We know Boruto likes to act like Sasuke. He's become a lot like Sasuke. He trained with this man for 3 years while he was on the run from stuff. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even from the attire to his personality, his character, that's his master, that's the student, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because I know there'll probably be some people that have criticized, like, oh, Boruto, get your own character. Just like any other character from different series or whatnot, if you don't see their master training them and you don't get a flashback to who they were before they met their master, they probably were really goofy, probably very different from the epic character that you know today. It's just that we get way more exposition into how Boruto came about from being the whiny brat to epic as hell like his master. And then lastly, this was a very strange one where I was kind of like, what? Apparently Sarada dresses in a man's outfit, the same brand Boruto uses, to remember him. And I was just there like, okay, so what, when she's just in the crib by herself, she just be like, yo bro, let me put on, you know, some baggy clothes, like Sarada. Okay, I mean, she likes to thug it out, but then again, there's a lot of women that like that, you know how many women they be wanting that hoodie from your closet, bro, come on now. But yeah, that was like super random and made me question, who is asking the questions here? If it was me, I'd be going into deep lore, asking questions about Naruto, potential future. Like, there's a million things. You're bringing up information about Sarada wearing pajamas in the crib to remind herself of her boyfriend. Like, what? I messed with it though. I mean, at the very least, it just cements how much of a real true friend and how much of a real true person Sarada is. She really loves Boruto despite the fact that everything has been swapped and his position's been swapped thanks to omnipotence. But yeah, people, let me know what you guys think. Do you think that quote was basically Kishimoto confirming he's not really writing things, Ikemoto's taking care of everything, and he just kind of supervises once or twice a month taking a look? And how do you feel about Code still lingering around despite the fact that he was on the chopping block to be killed off way back? Like, just so many things. And your real thoughts and expectations for part 2 of this interview with Masashi Kishimoto and Mikio Ikemoto, the people working behind Boruto, and of course the original creator of Naruto. Okay people, so there's apparently more to this part 1 interview of the creators of Naruto and Boruto, and yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Apparently another important character was supposed to die, but Ikemoto insisted on keeping it alive. They can't spoil who this character is, and we could speculate who this character is, but I think even more so the statement shows the amount of power that Ikemoto does have over the story. For better or worse, he is able to stop a character from dying if he chooses to, because clearly he stopped a character from biting the big one. And yeah, again, we could speculate who it could be, but definitely this character is probably more so prominent, which even further establishes that Code is probably not going to be as important as we had previously thought, but this character is definitely going to. Kishimoto regrets that he didn't develop Sakura's relationship with her parents like he did with Naruto and Sasuke in the manga. And yeah, I mean, there's always been criticism as far as Masashi Kishimoto's handling of Sakura, but to be fair, there was it the Road to Ninja film where we got to see a little bit of Sakura's family life, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, even a filler episode or two where we got to see Sakura's parents. So we did get to see them, but considering the fact that I just said it was in filler, yeah, Kishimoto could have done better with the handling of Sakura's parents, their relationship, and just in general giving more exposition to one of the big 3 characters of Naruto, you know, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. And it probably would have also helped fans to feel a little bit more, I guess, connected to Sakura as a character if they knew more about her. Ikemoto added heels to Kunoichi because he likes that. They're chakra control professionals, and it's the new generation way to wear. They also have fashion in their world, and each village can have a different fashion like us in real life. I don't really care for that. I still think that's kind of silly, putting on heels when you're a ninja. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of the idea. I gotta keep it real. Like, it is what it is. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I think that's silly. Like, they're ninja at the end of the day. They're supposed to be going covert, and while I appreciate the drip immensely on Boruto, that's also not ninja attire, but at the very least, it's not going to distract or do anything to hinder his performance. You can say that they're chakra control professionals all day, but that's still extremely inconvenient to even be thinking about, yo, I need chakra because my heels is on my feet. Like, come on, fam. Stop. Boruto really takes care of what he wears and wants to be like Sasuke. Again, we know that he really wants to be like Sasuke, and I guess some things from pre-time skip completely haven't left him yet, as far as like, he's always been about, you know, kind of looking a certain way. He wants to look cool, so he still withheld that piece. And Ada buys clothes for Kawaki, but he doesn't care because he has a low self-esteem of himself, which that makes sense as well why Kawaki is wearing something different when we come back into the Boruto series with 2 blue vortex. Even when his clothes are thrown, he keeps them. Kishimoto's favorite animal in the series is Gamabunta. Ikemoto likes Mitsuki snakes, and he also talked about how summonings are now scientific ninja tools. There goes Ikemoto with his little edits there. Summonings are now scientific ninja tools, although I guess we've seen what Koji did. But yeah, I mean, Gamabunta being Kishimoto's favorite animal, that's cool to know. You could have probably assumed that, I guess, although maybe some might think Kurama. And Ikemoto likes Mitsuki snakes. Well, he's drawing them, so he probably wanted to pick something that he drew. Kishimoto wrote the important lines of the story before the serialization, and Ike follows but also suggests changes. This is a big one because this is very contradictory to some of the stuff we were speaking about just earlier in this video as far as who is doing what on the manga. And I wish this line was just a little bit more clearer, because he said basically he wrote the important lines of the story before the serialization. So he means in general, like, he's the one that writes the big pieces, the important stuff, and then Ikemoto follows them and does suggestions, or how does that work? But that also even further insinuates that Kishimoto is probably giving you maybe bulletin point style with extra details on, okay, this is what's going to happen in this chapter, boom, 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 or he might even do very rough storyboards so that you understand, and then Ikemoto takes it from there. But again, the language, you can easily take it as well that maybe he's talking about from a grandiose thing, a part of an arc, like he writes out like, hey, in this arc, this is gonna happen, and then they can, you know, admit changes, but that's not necessarily monthly. I'm going to lean more towards, just because it seems as though they're pushing it to the forefront, that he's probably a lot more involved than you would expect, but he's not doing everything. He's probably not writing everything, and an example again is Ikemoto is allowed to suggest changes or whatnot. He's probably not completely in control, but he's in there enough. He's making enough changes and whatnot. Just want to add in there that he could also be talking about before the manga was actually serialized, in terms of either before Two Blue Vortex or before the original Boruto manga in general. He had all the major beats of what's supposed to happen with the story written out. That seems unlikely for the entirety of the series. You could possibly throw that into Two Blue Vortex. Maybe he's already written out all the major factors and all the major bits that are supposed to happen in Two Blue Vortex, so there's that as well. Ada and Damon weren't in the first scenario, and many events like keeping characters alive, so the story is now somehow different from the vision Kishimoto had. So Ada and Damon being Ikemoto's ideas, seemingly. That's interesting, and honestly not surprising. They don't seem like characters that Kishimoto would come up with. Kishimoto's very, dramatic with his characters. They have all these extra layers and whatnot. And Ada and Damon, while Ada's powers are dramatic, they're pretty simplistic younger characters from a younger generation. So interesting to see how they collaborate. Another piece of information, apparently Kawaki will have character development soon. Boruto really had a big character development and has high esteem of himself and has more weight on his shoulders than Kawaki. Well, that's good to hear that Kawaki's gonna get some character development, considering the fact that since the time skip, he kind of just is the same Kawaki that we saw before the 3-year jump. And we already know Boruto just upgraded immensely. He leveled up like 1,000 levels, so we get that. Boruto is him. There's a question to compare Naruto and Sasuke to Boruto and Kawaki. They're different in many ways, as Boruto had everything and Kawaki didn't have anything, but Boruto is following Sasuke and Kawaki will somehow try to catch to Boruto after the time skip. And that's it. That is the end of the first interview now. But all in all, it's starting to suggest more and more that while Kishimoto may not be doing every single thing, and Ikemoto is a loud word, Kishimoto is pretty significant in putting together the quote-unquote name, which basically means like what's going to happen for the series. It doesn't necessarily say each chapter. It could be at the beginning of an arc. It could be every chapter, but Kishimoto is giving somewhat of a blueprint and Ikemoto is taking it from there. Hope you stuck around long enough to hear the updated information. If not, thanks for watching. Have an awesome day. Subscribe and hit that bell to get more. Thank you so much.
But in the end, it always ends with the end. So let's not pretend we can always start anew. We can do it again.